Hello, my name is Chris. This is the Chamael Corp, and today we are going to be working on Project Spacement. We've got most of our framing and our walls up, but now we need to start adding some detail. And so what we're doing is we're going to be adding some MDF facing to some beams that we built, just to increase the look of the sci-fi slash spaceshipness of this room. So right now we're just trying to make sure that we have really good measurements before we start cutting MDF. Sheets of MDF are not cheap, and we don't want to have to buy another one because we didn't measure as well as we should have. So we've got two things that we're going to be doing here. We're going to be doing the beam on the right. You can see the exposed drywall, and then a faux beam along that center wall. And so now that we've got our measurements, what we're doing is we're coming across and we are mapping all of that out on a sheet of 4x8 half-inch MDF. So once again, I'm going to stress that measuring carefully and making sure you know where your cuts are going to be made is really important. Also, one of the tricks to this build is that we determined that the floor isn't level. This is an old house. It was built in 1951. The basement floors are all over the place, so we kind of have to measure from the top down and then cut to allow for any imperfections in the floor after that. Hopefully, at the end, creating a flush look on the bottom that lines up well everywhere else. Chip is doing an amazing job here cutting out the centerpiece, or that center line, using a 2x4 as a guide to make those straight cuts. Here, he felt confident enough to do it without the guide, and I decided to trust him, which turned out to be an excellent decision. Here he is doing that angled cut, and then we're using a jigsaw just to get those pieces. Now we're bringing it through and we're going to set it up. And this is that faux beam that I mentioned along that center wall. And everything looks really good except that angle where the corner of that door is supposed to be basically parallel with that faux beam. So our angle is a little off, and we are going to cut a piece of MDF that will help us to correct that visually. Once again, importance of measuring and making good cuts. As you can see, that little piece will just slide in there. What we're going to do is we're going to wood glue it in place. Then we can fill it and sand it down later, and nobody's going to know that it's two pieces. But now you can see where that angle is parallel to the angle of the door. So we're going to... the first thing we're going to do is we're going to screw this thing down. Don't want it to move or adjust, and after we get this screwed down, then we're going to get that piece in there, hold it in place probably for a good 24 hours just to make sure that wood glue has time to dry. And then obviously that space along the top on the left, we'll just do the same thing where we'll cut a piece to fit and then we'll just pop it in there. So that should be fairly easy. Now, one of the things that this build has taught us is that, you know, you can make things work with what you got. So scraps always come in handy. We've been saving scraps and spare pieces all throughout this project, and we've gone back to them several times. So that's definitely something I recommend if you're attempting a build like this. All right. So now we're making sure that fits into place. Again, that angle looks good. Now we're going to apply some glue, and we're going to get it on there. And we're going to just use a spare piece of 2x4, screw it into the drywall just to hold things in place. We can easily pull that out and fill that hole later, but that's going to make sure it doesn't slide or slip. And now what we're going to do is we're going to use the cutout from that first piece to do the facing for this beam. Now this is the faux beam. This is the actual beam that runs the length of the room. And one of the design elements we've got throughout this build is that 45-degree cut corners angle. So we're going to be doing that. Coming across, we're just going to set this, well, first we're going to make a trim, I guess, to make sure that we're where we need to be. We're just going to set this on the second sheet of MDF, and then looking at our measurements, we're going to make sure we've got it in the right place, and then we're going to just trace that. And what that does is it saves us from having to go back to our measuring sheet and remeasure every line. You know, this is, we tested it against that beam, so we know this is a perfect cutout of what we need. So this is a great way to save some time and some possible human error, because I don't know about you, but with me, this whole math measuring angle thing doesn't come easy. And if I don't have to do something twice, I'm not going to do something twice. So here we are, we're making sure we've got the right width, we're making sure we've got the right placement here. And now that we've got this traced out, we're going to start cutting. Lovely view of my back. Yeah, maybe I should have cut that part out, but hey, whatever. So, and as we're doing this, you know, it's kind of a stream of consciousness thing, right? You know, so we're talking through and we're figuring things out on the fly. And we do have rough plans and we've got ideas in our heads on what we're doing, but we don't have professional blueprints or anything like that, right? You know, it's kind of a, look at that, he made that cut with no guide. He was feeling confident and he did a great job. So I recommend Chip for any home improvement projects that you have going on. Now we're making that cut, just making sure that we get the right area there. And look, I'm actually getting to make a cut. Right-handed, no less, so I added a little bit of skill and challenged myself there, and now we're using that jigsaw again just to loosen things up. Now it's going to come over, we're going to place it, we're going to see how things work. Holding things in place, yeah, that looks awesome. You know, we're going to, obviously we're going to have to do a little bit of just trimming up against those 2x4s that comprise the structure of that beam, right? Next time Chip's over, he's going to bring the router and we're just going to do that. It's going to be nice and clean. And what we're thinking about doing is working in some LED light strips in there just to give it, you know, that lit look. We're doing that in a lot of the space, and just trying to figure out where we can implement that so it looks organic to the build and also just adds to that illusion of being in a ship instead of in a basement, right?